Now, hello everybody, and welcome to the show. And I really appreciate the following that you give me on Facebook, especially. I'd like for you to jump over to YouTube and a little bit and check me out there, and also Rumble. I'd like to get those numbers up for me. But it's been a I guess a long grind on the show. This is a Dave Emmons, of course, with the strange reality, and I have different guests on all the time, but I have a buddy on today that he's close to what I study, and he knows quite a bit about this ET and UFO topic. That he's very good, and I depend on him a lot. When I start crying, I'll cry on his shoulder. So,
Yeah.
but my guest is Stephen Mera, and you guys like him. He does very well on his own YouTube channel, and he's an investigative researcher, a journalist of anomalous phenomena, and a lecturer who conducts experiments. Steve works with paranormal mechanics, and author of several books, and serves as a spokesman for subject related TV documentaries. He is a tutor of the UFO Investigators training course. He has hosted over 300 international TV shows, including Fox TV, Hammer Productions, and numerous organizations. Stephen has been investigating for 40 years and has a bachelor's degree in science. And he's got some sites here, www.phenomena magazine. I will put that in the narrative like I usually do. And his books are on Amazon, so you can look those up. Stephen Mera, Mera. Stephen, thank you for coming on the show and welcome aboard again. And I know I'm going to have you again in the future. I just love talking to you. You're so knowledgeable. Stephen Mera, tell us what's on top of
Yeah.
your mind right now. What's
Well,
going on
first
with
off, Dave, thanks for having me on. It's been an interesting week. You cannot miss the elephant in the room, and that is President Trump going to be releasing UFO
Yeah.
documents, which is
Hmm.
all seems to be talking about at the moment. It was interesting what Luna said recently, because she mentioned that she believed they were interdimensional,
Yes.
not extraterrestrial, And I thought, okay, that's interesting because we were talking about this being interdimensional 10, 15 years back, and everybody raised an eyebrow then. Well, Steve, what are you sure you're not lost the plot? Well, no, I do believe they're interdimensional. And now there's a lot of people coming forward and saying, look, Steve, I believe it's interdimensional. I haven't said so, but I do. And the evidence that's coming out now is basically is all leaning towards that hypothesis, though that it's not a new one. I mean, the old terminology was ultra terrestrials. John Keel talked about ultra terrestrials.
Hmm.
I think he was probably one at the time, one of the world's leading pioneers in the research. And I was blessed to have met him when he was in the UK. Um, there are a handful of people that have been early on this and put it out there. And then we kind of forgot. And when all the ETH extraterrestrial hypothesis stuff, and now we've come full circle, Dave, and we're back to yes, it's likely interdimensional again, that they're popping
Uh,
into our reality and go and
mm,
popping out again.
yeah, Stephen, could you explain the interdimensional what Representative Luna said? I forgot to mention that I didn't move my house. I just moved my studio around. I got tired of looking at the same old logo and myself there. So I thought everybody else would get tired. I need to change my digs. So what I did is I upgraded my background. I got a picture of me playing drums on the I
Yeah, I
guess
can
it's on
see
my
that.
left side, and I got my medals from military, and I got two guitars, three guitars actually. I got one down below
Oh
right
yeah,
there,
yeah, yeah.
Takamine acoustic, and a Fender ukulele. Had to get the best in Fender ukulele. So I play all those instruments, and I've done that for some time, 40 years. But getting back to Stephen and explaining, I
Mm.
forgot to tell people I didn't move
Yeah,
or anything. I changed my digs here. That's about it.
yeah.
Uh, Stephen, explain to people that may not know what Luna said about
Okay.
interdimensional.
Okay, well, first off, let's just accept the fact that for so long now, 70, 80 years, we ran with this narrative, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, that all these over 4,000 different variations of beings now, but early on we thought they were coming from planets or the visitors.
Hmm.
in their crafts, traveling vast distances of space to come to planet Earth in their crafts that have obviously must have some specialized propulsion systems to travel that far and that fast. But as time's gone on, things have changed over the years. Now, the whole narrative of ETH, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, has been dropped. Nobody's talking hypothesis of extraterrestrials anymore. Not at the Pentagon level, the Air Force, Navy, you name it. It is all NHI, non-human intelligence, not extraterrestrial, and interdimensional. Now, when I say interdimensional, it basically means that they're not traversing the way we thought they were. It's also unlikely that we've got over 4,500 various beings from outer space coming from these different planets, which have two arms, two legs, a nose and eyes, just like us, the bipedals. They have similar crafts doing the same thing. Because in the 1966, 67, just prior to us landing on the moon in 69, a couple of different things took place. The Brookings Institute was one, which NASA got to have a look at, the scientists, and they wanted to know, what do we do if we find any form of, life in outer space,
Hmm.
extraterrestrials or evidence of it? The Brookings Institute wrote a big report on this, but there were mainly two main paragraphs, which was interesting. The first paragraph said, you can't tell the public.
Yeah.
But the second paragraph said, but you're going to have to prepare them. And this is back in the late 1960s. Of course, other scientists from around the world got together. These are the big wigs, these are the big brains in the world. And they were asking them questions like, well, what can we expect if we experience extraterrestrial life? If we're going to start leave planet Earth and start going out there, what can we expect it to be like? So the scientists went to town and they started looking into it and everything. They came back with a report saying basically a lot of these scientists were astronomers and physicists and astrophysicists, and they know planets. They look at the planets out there in space and they understand what they are. We can get a lot of data back now from long range telescopes with special filters and information from them, and we realize that we're very unique. We are very unique. I mean, even in a recent posting on the internet last week, it said we, planet Earth, might be in a solitude location. In other words, we're out there on our own somehow, in a
Mm.
vast darkness of space where people don't find us. That's what they're kind of saying. Now, I always sort of go, well, hang on a second, what about all the UFOs and the ETs and all that sort of thing? How does that fit in then if we're in a solitude location? Well, that's because they're going off the Pentagon announcement from Arrow, which was the Pentagon UFO program, concluding that there was not enough evidence to say they're extraterrestrial, and also NASA also concluding exactly the same thing. Yes, they're both aware that UFOs are seen and they're photographed and they're videoed, and there's military personnel filming these things. They're caught on radar. But there's not enough evidence to say that they've got any details, conclusions of finding things traveling through space coming to Earth. Because if we look at statistics now, there's so many hundreds of thousands of UFOs seen on a 24-hour basis around the planet. And we're being conservative here. It's really ramped up. And you think to yourself, well, there's not hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these things traveling the vast distances of space and coming through to planet, because we can monitor the ionosphere of planet Earth very, very well now. You won't believe the stuff we've got up there, Dave, now, to look at everything that's passing by
Yeah.
or even coming towards planet Earth. Because when it goes through the ionosphere, it leaves an ionospheric disturbance like a boat that leaves a wake in the water. It's so obvious to see. They're not traversing. Yeah, we get little bits now and again, but there's no super traffic, no highway going backwards and forwards to Earth. So the hundreds of thousands that these seen on a regular basis, where are they coming from? Well, it seems that the evidence points towards interdimensional hypothesis that they have the capabilities to pop into our reality and then go about doing the business and then pop out of our reality at will. And also to be able to go into the ground, to go into the water, as if the water isn't there, as if the ground doesn't exist for them sometimes, and yet they can be physical when they want to be and land and make marks on the ground, which is all very confusing, of course. But we're dealing with what we might refer to is anomalistic physics. It's anomalistic physics. It doesn't fit into the physics of our understanding.
Yeah,
But
Stephen, I wanted to ask you a question. You talk about all
yeah,
these eyes that we have out there in space and all the
yeah.
technology. An optometrist asked me yesterday after I showed her a couple of videos, and she was very interested in UFO topics. A lot of people are, and there's a
Mm.
lot that's not. But she asked me, "What does Space Force do?" Now, all I can talk about is maybe a few conspiracies and thoughts about it. But Stephen, do you know what the Space Force is actually doing? As
Yeah,
you
of
mentioned,
course.
all the instrumentation out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Space Force do a lot more, actually. I mean, the Space Force is an independent force that works with anything in regarding space duties. And that means the surveillance of certain satellites, obtaining data, the launching, with the retrieval, the fixing, the monitoring process, all those wonderful things, which are kind of normal. However, they're also apparently involved with more clandestine things that the general public don't get to hear about, which is, they're linked in with NORAD for monitoring all activities in space, including incursions from things that might turn up on radar, traveling at high velocities or at super high altitudes. There's a global mapping system really that they're actually linking into. So Space Force is it's a dedicated force just to look at that, just to sort of deal with those matters rather
Mhm.
than NASA, because NASA's about exploration and science. And well, it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
So, and with it being more so, apparently it's supposed to be in the public domain, though some of it isn't. They didn't want to sort of be dealing with all that on top of it. So Space Force is sort of taken quite a considerable amount of things from NASA, and maybe even linking up with the European space agencies and other things and other places. So they have a lot of things to do, a lot of work, and some of it is a little bit questionable, to be honest with you. Yeah, and about the UFO side of things.
Yeah, there's conspiracies that Space Force has bases on the moon and Mars. Or is that the secret space program that they have, Stephen?
Well, there is this secret space program that's been talked about since the late 70s, believe it or not, since I first started hearing about this sort of stuff. I've never found enough evidence to support that us humans, have bases out in space on the moon or on Mars. And the reasons being is because, it's such a hostile location. I just don't think, humans just do not we're not geared to be off planet, to be honest with you.
Right.
It's supposed to be made difficult so that we don't get off the planet. And the fact is that because of the tremendous problems that we're faced, I just don't believe that we have our own there, but we may do in the future for sure. But it's not that I'm ruling out the fact that these things like Mars and the moon might not have any things on it. I do believe there's things on there, but you've got to question, are they ours? There
Hmm.
was some suspicion that it was uh, some type of base on the far side of the moon, but this was talked about in the 60s, and there was Dr. Wolf who talked about this prior to him passing away. And he had a terrible accident whilst riding his motorcycle. But before he passed away, he worked at NASA and claimed in the 60s, working for them, that he was shown photography of a lunar base on the far side of the moon, which you'd never get to see, coincidentally. And the moon's a very special place, one of its kind, really. As far as we can look into deep space, we can never find a moon like ours, especially that rotates just like it does going around planet Earth with its back to us all the time. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's interesting. How does that happen?
Yeah.
We've never found anything quite like this, quite like the moon before. But there may be things, we're certainly finding plenty of things on Mars as if they were once a civilization. There are many photographs of things which look to be bits of machinery, bits of buildings, stonework. You can clearly see something, but it's probably millions of years old. And it's assumed from the information now being gathered in regarding the Martian surface and what we know about the environment that it may have sustained life on there, just like planet Earth had oceans and had greenery and had oxygen. And there was some type of massive catastrophe that took place, which basically led to Mars losing its atmosphere. And basically, it's like 1,000 Hiroshima bombs went off or something. It's just that's what it looks like. And then covered up with silt and sand and dust. And now we've got rovers on there. Now and again, they get photographs of unusual things. And you think to yourself, well, that ain't normal. And yeah, and it's not just one or two photographs,
Yeah,
Dave.
they
There's
don't show
hundreds of
too.
these things,
Yeah, they don't
hundreds of
show
them.
too many. They don't show
You
too
don't
many of
show
those to the
any of
public.
them.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
I saw you on YouTube and I watched it because you were giving me some advice about how an abductee or a contactee or even an involuntary participant can protect themselves a little bit from the energy that ETs have. And you was on the typical skeptic, and that's Mr. Cahill, I think,
oh
is his
yes,
show.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And you
yeah.
had a scientific thing on there about iron and also about UV light. Could you tell people who might want to be interested in? I'm wearing
Sure.
I'm wearing a rod on iron
Yeah.
medallion.
Well, I have a smaller one, Dave, and I never take it off. It's always with me all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And it's iron 5 raw iron. So, but look, there's a science behind it. This isn't just some type of belief system. There's actual science behind this, and it dates back from into ancient times. If we look into the Middle East thousands of years ago, and we're talking about the jinn, which appeared as smokeless fire
right.
now smokeless fire is a burning ball of light with no smoke coming off it. How many burning balls of light do we have in the sky now, Dave?
Yeah,
A lot
yeah.
of these things are everywhere. Now, if I was to bring somebody from the Middle East, they'll call them jinn because that's how they're represented in ancient times. We can look at the readings. What is a jinn? Oh, well, it's smokeless fire, and they've also been seen to be like shadow form or shadow figures you know. But there are different references, and what they were using back then was hematite, and it was worn close to the skin. Now, hematite's about 90 odd percent iron in it. It's not because it's a crystal, it's because of the iron content, and it would help kind of keep these things at bay, especially when they start roaming around at night and paying you a visit in your bedroom or whilst you're sleeping, which is generally what most of this phenomenon does, including the paranormal, including the UFO entities, especially regarding alien abduction cases. But throughout Europe, they used iron again in Ireland. They placed iron bars over cribs of children to stop the children from being abducted by the fairies, which is basically just a different style of the alien abduction scenario. And then also that they started to, in some of the farms in Sweden and Norway, they started banging iron rods into the ground to protect the livestock from being taken or worse by phenomena. They would see these lights coming down from the mountains. They knew what they're after. They're taking the cattle, they're taking the sheep, or they're found in the morning, and unfortunately, some of the animals are deceased in strange ways. Yes, we're talking about those incidents like the 1970s Colorado incidents on cattle, but we're talking hundreds of years back. So we know it's not down to the government, this,
Mhm.
you know. Certainly the government are interested in it though. But that was happening as well. And then if you look around sort of medieval England and look at some of the old Tudor buildings and things, you can go into these Tudor buildings and it's all wood, and black and white painted and stuff on the outside. Look beautiful. And they're hundreds of years old. But when you go into some of the rooms, there's nothing in them now because obviously a lot of things have been taken out. But you can see where the beds used to be. Now, of course, back then people weren't as tall, so the beds weren't quite as big. I think
Mhm.
people averagely about 5.5 foot then. You
Yeah.
know, we'd probably be classed as giants now. But you could tell where the beds were because there was in the floor were iron nails, which they put around the bed on the floor. to ward away the night terrors, to ward away the things that come at night, the dark things. And of course, you start looking in all these places all over the world. You think to yourself, well, it's like the unknown secret. What is going on? Where did his ancient school of knowledge come from about iron and it's the practice of using it?
Mhm.
It goes back so far, you end up losing track, losing the trace. It just filters into an invisible hole. But it's been used for so many years, up to thousands of years now, and even now we're promoting it in the current day because even the church recognized it. A lot of the medieval churches, a lot of churches have wrought iron gates or wrought iron fencing around them, which
Yeah.
separates the cemetery from the church. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've got any there like that over there, Dave, but they're separating the realms.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it
so,
makes sense. It does. It
yeah,
does make sense. And when I saw the scientific thing that you had on YouTube with you, it made sense about the UV light and the iron. Could you tell me also, a lot of the Romans and the military people had the webbing, metal webbing. Was that
yeah.
iron also to protect them,
Well, yeah,
Stephen?
they did utilize it. Also, Levi priests used, metal, iron in their bracing and stuff.
Mhm.
It's interesting. He's like the first priest that came to do the exorcisms, of demonic possession cases. The crucifixes they're using were made of iron. And sometimes the phenomena, you see, the phenomena doesn't like iron and it doesn't like us having it around us if they want to interfere or do get to us in some way. This really is a problem for them. In demonic possession cases, whatever these things are, these dark entities, when the priest is approaching and conducting an exorcism, utilizing an iron cross, an iron crucifix, on some of the occasions, the phenomenon would heat up the iron so much that the priest would have to sort of disengage from it. And that's all they wanted because they're after trying to get hold of the priest now. They're going to
Mhm.
target the priest, but it's not very good. It's a problem when they've got iron and the physical contact with it as well. So they try and, disattach the iron from them. So by heating it up, they were forced to let it go. And yeah, I've got photographs of the burn marks on the hands. So even that was used then. It's everywhere. But what's really interesting is that we now know that why are manifestations, and we're not just talking the appearance of ETs, we're also talking anything that might be dark, shadow figures, jinn-like stuff, and even paranormal apparitions and things. They seem to struggle to manifest in the location of yourself where there's the presence of iron. And we now know through the physics is that iron is the world's greatest absorber of RF frequencies, high frequencies, RF. So we now believe that the RF is also utilized in the process of the manifestation of these things being in your environment. So they just don't like it. It's not their sort of thing.
Mhm.
UV light also helps with negative things for sure, because these are known as the night terrors. These are known as the dark entities. These are things that come at night. You don't tend to see them during the day, but then at night things change, the atmosphere changes, your environment changes. These things come out to torment us and do what they want to do. So flooding the location with a little UV bulb, and you hardly see anything of it really, because we don't really see much of the UV light frequency. But to them, they do, and they don't like it. I mean, I've had phenomenon literally relocating a home in a place where there was no UV. It was like in one particular room when we never put it in there, and that's where it was. It was hiding in there, sort of a thing. So we do know that can be effective. It also targets people with low iron in their bodies. I mean, this has been going on a long time. I mean, ancient tribes which sacrificed people to the deities, the gods. Wasn't so many men. There were a lot of women during the menstrual cycle because there's less iron in their bodies, and that was the right time to sacrifice to these things. And if we look at the Colares UFO incident, 1977 and 1978, on the Colares on the island of Brazil, it was an island just off the shores of Brazil. And what's interesting is that people were attacked and the iron was taken out of their bodies. They were all anemic. Some of them even perished. It was a terrible ordeal. They couldn't get away from this thing. It attacked in the night. It paralyzed them. The beam of light hits them. It penetrates the roof. It goes through the roof, through the walls. You can't get away from it.
Right.
And it's coming from UFOs, which are chasing them and firing these beams of light down and extracting the iron from their bodies. They were being prepped for contact, some of these people. Not a good situation. So we do know that it's a long history about this. And also, one of the main things, after talking to a number of different researchers, and they've utilized some of these things, people that are having experiences, is small cameras. They're battery operated. They are Wi-Fi. In other words, they connect to the cloud, and you can just pick this little one up and just walk around with it anywhere you want. They don't like cameras. They don't like appearing on them. You
Yeah, I
know
know.
that better than I do,
I
Dave.
know that. Steve, I know just got a picture of one. I haven't shown it to the general public, but it happened in my upstairs, to this top stairs, and I had the camera there. And you asked me, and I know Linda Moulton Hall asked me one time, why did I put my cameras out? Okay, I'll tell you why. Because I heard some things going on the night before, and every
Mm.
time my wife leaves the house, and she's gone now, she's in the Philippines, I have activity. So when I start having activity and I know there's something going on, I hear noises or I see something that's just out of the corner of my eye, I put a camera out and I caught this one tall gray, and he's got a hand that kind of looks like a reptilian hand. I guess that's what they look like. But for the 2 seconds, you have to see it real quick. Some people see it quick and some others don't. But I think when you're telling people about this iron thing, I've been abducted, and I know several times during my lifetime. And I know the doctors always say I'm okay on iron. So I don't know if they're abducting me and I still got iron in me. You said they can deplete your iron and make you anemic, Stephen?
Well, no, what they tend to do is target people more if they've got low iron in the body. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they can take people who have iron in the body for sure, but it's a combination of using different things. I mean, keeping raw iron in the environment, UV, utilizing supplements and putting the cameras out, those sort of things. That's the best we could do. I mean, as deterrence, I mean, we can get rid about, stop these about 90%. Of course, what happens is they can always send a hierarchy in and send one of the big boys in that basically will get past them all. But most of the things that people are dealing with, it's what I refer to as the minions. You know, these are the ones that just all the same, doing the same thing, and they don't like it. If you're real important to them, yes, they'll manage to get through. But I'd say 90% of the time, it's going to help. These things do help people.
I think your advice about iron, UV, light and everything is going to help some people that have fear about being abducted and having been abducted, and they've had some horrific times with it. And giving this advice with the rod iron and UV, to me, that I ask you, I said, I'm a little concerned. I get these visitors in my house, and it's a little concerning when they
Mm,
come in your house. It's different when
it
you're out
is.
on the road and they pick you up like they did in Montana. I had that in Montana and I had it in Wyoming, two events there that were really mind shaking. I come back and they took a blood test on me. My red blood cells were higher.
Yeah.
Does that make a difference, Stephen? What
Yeah, yeah,
causes
yeah.
that?
I mean, basically, within a certain, yeah, you can be affected. Your blood cells can be adjusted. You can find abnormalities for sure during these experiences, and it's through that experience that we receive these abnormalities. I mean, some of them are not. I mean, there are real horrific ones out there for sure, which I've talked to people, and came face to face with an entity and they wanted to do certain things. It said to her, though, don't worry, there might be a little bit discomfort, but she nearly lost her eye.
Mm.
And they nearly burnt that eye right out. And they just said, don't worry, might be a little bit discomfort. So you know what, those things can happen. I mean, I've been investigating these types of things for a long time. People think that the alien abduction phenomenon has gone away. It hasn't.
No.
I know that we had a lot in the 1980s and 90s, and people would put it down to TV shows like The X-Files and things. But no, what basically happened is that the phenomena carried on. doing it without care or concern, but the reporting of them became silent. People aren't talking about it anymore. They're worried about being ridiculed. There's not many support groups around anymore, Dave, for people.
Yeah.
Not like it used to be,
Well,
you
Stephen,
know.
also, I think they're doing a better job of erasing memories. I know myself, I get bits and pieces, and I know who they were and what they were that got me, but I don't have a total memory of it. I think maybe the
No.
government made a deal with them to swipe the memories of
Well,
us people. Is that
yeah.
you think so, Stephen?
Well, there's look, I don't know if there's a deal on the table. I don't think there ever was. They don't need to make a deal because we can't stop him anyway.
Right.
If you've got, if it's like making a deal with a monkey. That we won't go into the cage and grab them now and
Yeah.
again. They can't stop us.
Mhm.
Why sit down and having a conversation with the monkey to try and arrange that? No,
Right.
I don't think it's, I don't think, I think it's quite speculative that ever happened because they're so intrusive. It's a phenomenon. It's always been here. It's not a new phenomenon. And they just take us whenever they want, and we can't do nothing about it. This is what, this is what CIA operative, retired CIA operative Jim Semivan said recently. He said, from what he knows and what he's learned about this phenomena, it is indigestible.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
a
we've got researchers like Peter Levender coming forward now, only the last week or so, on the Danny Jones podcast, saying, well, there's nothing we can do. They can't tell us everything about disclosure because they can't say we can't control the skies. We can't stop the phenomena, doing what it's doing. It could be right under your noses at any time, at any given time of the day, any minute. And we can't stop it. We can't control it. We don't know where they are. We don't know how to infiltrate them. They are the masters. And how are we ever supposed to lay that on to the general public? We can't. There'd be panic in the streets, you
right.
know. So all we can talk about is, well, we might have some biologics, we might have some crashed ones, and we might have seen this and heard that. And that's about it. And that's all we're going to get from like UAP hearings. Nobody wants to talk about an experience on the UAP hearings.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist, alien abduction, according to the UAP hearings. So because they don't want to go down that road. Dr. Carla Turner, many years ago, who was going down that road, she was one of the big people that were first putting this information out about the alien abduction phenomena. And she was an abductee herself. She went through some terrible traumatic experiences, as well as her husband. But she got threatened by MIB, Men in Black turned up and threatened her, but she still persisted. But unfortunately, she passed away. But and that's a little bit questionable as well. But and she's not the only one. Ted Rice is another one, got threatened. And other researchers that I know, they didn't want it out in them days, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. No, so they sent people out to shut them up, and when they didn't, they contact them again and say, look, we know you've got two grandchildren, and then they shut up. Dave, this is terrible what they do. But the thing is, Dave, they don't do that anymore because they can't control it. The internet came. I mean, I got my internet around about 1994,
Yeah.
95.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Before that, though, they could control it, because it was just basically just people talking, by lectures and doing things. How do you get the word out then? Well, you have to go to a lecture, so they know you're there, they can warn you. The thing is now, we've got the internet. They lost control once the internet came because this information just went exploded and go anywhere and they can't control it all. So they gave up trying to, stop people from coming forward with new research about this.
Yeah,
But,
I've had people track me.
oh
Last year I've
yeah,
had three people, and I've had two. This strange guy, tall, good-looking guy, young guy, maybe 30ish, and I've seen him twice now. The
yeah.
one, and I think he's not an angel. I think he's just following me, or
I think it's
he's
just an operatives.
yeah, the
The thing is,
operates.
Dave, they are so good that I think sometimes they want you to see them.
Yeah,
Because I tell you what, I think they're so good sometimes we'd never know. We would never know.
yeah, they're
We're not
invisible. That's why
special.
I get
Yeah.
shadows on my wall for my cameras because they're invisible, and
Oh yeah. Well,
but
that
the
could
light
be.
makes yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that could be the others.
I wanted to
Yeah.
get I want to cover you have so much knowledge of so many different topics. Uh, investigating strange disappearances and UFO ET encounters. Do you have any stories you can tell us, Stephen, about
Oh,
that?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, strange disappearances. Okay, here's one for you. Um, about 23 years ago, I had a phone call from the police authorities in Southampton, UK, in regarding a disappearance, and I thought it was quite unusual for them to reach out to me. And I met with a CID officer, a criminal investigation department officer, and I met him at we went for met at a cafe. We had a coffee, and I was really curious. Why are they reaching out to me? And they said to me, "Are you aware of any strange disappearances?" And I said, "What do you mean in the way of do you mean human disappearances?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "And when you say strange, do you mean sort of profound, unusual ones?" Yes. I said, "I've heard of a few." I remember story of three joggers which were jogging through Central Park in New York. And we're going back some time now. And literally the middle guy, they were all friends, and the middle one, they were all jogging along, and the middle one tripped over, and as he fell to the ground, he just blinked out, according to his two friends. And they went to the police and reported, and he was never found. There was some suspicion, but nobody found anything. But that was they maintained that story, never changed their story. That he just literally just gone. There are many of those incidents that take place around the world. They are quite profound, these disappearances and just spontaneous disappearances. But the police officer said to me, he said, "Well, this because of this particular investigation, he wanted to see if I could shine any light onto it." I said, "Well, why now?" I said, "Well, because it's an analog. Everything was typed out on paper in them days about this incident, this case investigation he did. But now going into the digital era, everything's got to be taken and re-put onto computers and stuff. So they were going through that transition like many other companies around the world when we're going from analog to digital. And of course, all these case files which are typed up. You remember the old days of watching a crime show? They'd be typing it up and then
Yeah.
pull it out you know what I mean?
Perry
So
Mason. Yeah, I see that
Perry
on night.
Mason,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, they don't do that now, Dave. It's all electronic and it's all stored and it's all, very clever. But all that, the mountain of work it's from all those years to get it to digital. Not all of them been done yet, but they still go it hammer and nail every day. And I said, okay, yeah. So what about? Well, we brought this out the archives. We're making it digital, but we wondered if you could shine any light on this. I said, okay, tell me about it. So. There's a gentleman who's married, his wife, just them two, and they have a child. They've just had a baby boy. He's only about 3, 4 months old. The gentleman has a good job. He's just been promoted, got a company car. Yeah, it was a nice Rover he got. And on that Friday night, he decided to go out to have a few drinks with some friends and, or meet up with them. But he was going to take the company car to show it off because it was a brand new Rover. And of course, everybody liked those nice cars in the UK. And show it off a bit. So he came in and had his dinner after work. His wife was in the kitchen doing the pots. And he went upstairs to get changed before going out. She finished the pots and she suddenly realized it's very quiet. It's, has he gone out already? But why didn't he say goodbye? He never goes out without saying goodbye. So she walks outside. She walks into the lounge, looks out the window. His car's out there, and he's planning on taking his company car, to show off to his friends. What I've got. She's confused, so she walks to the hallway, and on the table is his car keys. So she thinks, well, he's not gone out then, you know? So she shouts upstairs to her husband, no reply. She shouts again, no reply. And she's listening. It's deadly quiet. He's not in the bathroom. There's no water running. And she's thinking, what the hell? And so she's walking up the stairs. And as she's walking up the stairs, she thinks to her, halfway up the stairs, he must be playing a trick on me. That's it. He's playing a trick on me. So she shouts out, "If you playing a trick on me, you jumping out on me to scare me, I'll have you," that sort of thing. You'll be in trouble.
Yeah.
Anyway, she gets up there. There's no sign of him. There's no sign of him. Now, clearly, he went into the bedroom and he's obviously taken off his belt from his trousers because that was the belt that was on the bed, and he was due to be changed, but he no change of clothes. She's a bit confused. She's like, where is he? He didn't go out. He wouldn't have gone out. He was going to take his car. He's not even took his keys to get back in later if he comes in a bit late. I don't know. Anyway, she thought it was just one of those strange things. Maybe he decided not to go out. Maybe he decided didn't not to take the keys. Maybe he decided not to say goodbye. I mean, okay, it's a bit unusual that, be honest. So she sat up a little bit concerned and she rang around. It got to about 11 o'clock at night. She's thinking, well, he normally gets in about 10. Okay, give him a bit longer. And it's like 11:30, quarter to 12. So she ends up ringing the family. And she's telling the family what's happened. I don't know where he is. It's a bit strange, isn't it? And they're saying, nah, he's a bit weird. And yeah. Anyway, she said, oh, the family said, look, you go and get some sleep. He'll probably turn up, but he may have gone somewhere else or to his friends or something, after going to the public house, to the bar. So she didn't rest. She couldn't sleep. She got the baby down to bed like, and she was sat up downstairs in the living room, very worried. And it went to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And by 5 o'clock in the morning, she couldn't have it. And she couldn't take it anymore. She had to ring the police. She rang the police. She was that worried. She rang the police. Well, of course, the police in the UK said, well, he's got to be disappeared. He can't just, he's got to be missing for 24 hours. She says, well, when did he go out? Well, it was, so he'd be missing in 24 hours, come about 4 or 5 hours away. Yeah, so they said, well, give us a ring back just in case he comes in. And so he never did. She rings him back. He never turned up for 2 or 3 days, Dave. So the police came and they did a thorough investigation. And in fact, the CID officers that attended, the Criminal Investigations Department, even looked into her in case there was something untoward had gone on.
Yeah, foul
You
play.
know, but they knew though that well, there's no reason for him to want to disappear. They're not in debt. He's got a good job. He's happy. Got a child. Got their own home, new house. It's recently purchased. No reason of anything unusual could have taken place. They just didn't know what to make of it. They had no idea. So they didn't know. So anyway, they kept in touch with her, but they ran all these investigations, couldn't find him. So what happened then was she had her sisters over and her mom, and they were regularly coming over, giving her some support because she was always upset. And it's about 9 days later, something like 9 or 10 days later, she's in the kitchen and she hears a bang from upstairs. And she thinks, well, our bedroom's above that, or the kitchen. So she goes to the bottom of the stairs, very gingerly, and she shouts up, who's up there? And of course, her husband replies, it's me. And she goes running up there. She goes running into the bedroom and she just sees him stood there in the same clothes, Dave, looking no different than he disappeared. He hasn't even grown hair growth. There's not even a little bit extra hair growth on him. He's looked like exactly as he was that night in the same clothing. And he's got this unusual expression on his face. And she just runs in and she flings her arms around him and she's crying and she's trying to tell him she's saying, where have you been? Where have you been? What happened? And he has no idea what she's talking about. He takes her
Mm.
down. She takes him downstairs to prove to him with the newspapers and, and the TV and whatnot, that it is the date. This is the time. This is the day. And he couldn't. He thought he was having some type of breakdown. The police were called. The police turned up and said, look, they thought that you were having some type of trick. You trying to waste police time, trying to pull this joke. But they were sincere. They didn't know what to conclude, Dave. So they shelved this. They've just put this file on the shelf, didn't know what to do with it. The thing is, Dave, is that about 3 weeks later, the damn thing happened again.
Really?
He goes upstairs, and she knew after
What?
about 10 minutes. She knew after about 10 minutes it had gone silent, and she just knew she had this feeling. She shouted upstairs, he'd gone. Now the thing is, this happened probably about 35 years ago now.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
asking you when it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 35 years ago. Now the thing is, he never came back, Dave, that second time. Now, the thing is that this was a relatively new home. She wasn't working. She refused to sell the house, thinking her husband is going to turn up one day. She absolutely refused. And so her family had to club together to purchase the house, the payments for the mortgage and stuff. Because they only recently just got the house, you see, when before this happened. And she's still there, as far as I know, today, waiting for her husband to come back. And he never did, Dave. And he's got his child is now must be about 35, 36 years of age. Don't know. Now,
Is
how
it?
was that for disappearance?
Yeah. Is there any, like the inspectors, did they think that maybe he could have crawled out a window, got different clothes, and then disappeared for a while and then come
Well, they
back?
were very thorough. I mean, they found no evidence of anything about him vacating the home, no evidence of a change of clothing, no evidence of anything taken. They just couldn't find anything. There was absolutely nothing. They were absolutely dumbfounded. They couldn't understand. So they
Yes.
didn't know
Yeah.
what to do. They left it as unknown and on a shelf. And then
Yeah.
it was gathering dust for years until became digitized and they got it off that shelf. And this is when this CID officer found out about it, thought it was unusual, and started to ask me questions. Do I know about strange disappearances? Well, I said they do happen, but I believe they do. Some very profound things like that have happened, but that is a real unusual one. For him to go and then come back 9 days or 10 days later, he was booked into the hospital to have a brain scan, a CAT scan, because he thought he was losing it. Why
Yeah.
can't I
Mhm.
remember where I've been? That sort of thing. And then he went again. He never got the CAT scan, Dave. They took him
Dude,
again, or he disappeared again.
Stephen, your thoughts? Is he going to another dimension, maybe crossing over?
I think he was something just came along and plucked him out of our reality.
Hmm.
I really do. Because there are other incidents around the world that are so profound, just like this.
Yeah.
And I have to say, are these people just being plucked out of reality? I mean, what happens during the 911, the 411 cases? David
Yeah.
Pillardi
I was going to ask you about that,
National
Steve. Yeah.
Parks. I
Yeah.
mean, these people sometimes are only 3 foot away from you. And you turn around, they're gone.
Yeah.
Where have they gone? They couldn't have gone away. I would have heard them move. They just literally as if something's come along and just boom,
Yeah.
plucks them out of
Stephen,
reality.
they happen in national parks a lot, in
Yeah.
parks and hiking. They disappear that way,
Well,
Stephen, I guess.
this phenomenon seems to target the people in those remote locations. So it likes the remoteness for sure. But then what else is going on in there? Well, you've got a load of UFO stuff going on, paranormal stuff, and cryptid stuff going on in those locations as well. It's not even a good place to even go. I mean, I'd say to anybody, if you have to go through a national park, tether yourselves together
Yeah.
with rope. Do anything, please.
Hmm.
You know, because there's evidence now that some of these people have turned up. Or evidence of them have turned up in the location where the police authorities searched several times. And not only it's not like it's so in your face, Dave. It's like we looked at this location where he disappeared 10 times. There was nothing there. We scoured it with dogs, we scoured it with professionals, everything, nothing ever seen, no traces, as if he just vanished. 3 months later, somebody's walking through that location and there's a big boulder, and on top of that boulder is some nicely folded pleated clothes. And on top of the clothes is a tooth or a piece of skull. And they go and the police are called. They're like, what the hell? All nicely folded clothing, which
Hmm.
was the guy's clothing who disappeared. They take the tooth, they take the piece of the skull, they go analyze it. It's his DNA match. So he came to his demise. But then something, which is very, very sinister, Dave, to fold the clothes up and put them on a rock in the place where he disappeared, where there was no trace of him, and to place evidence on top of that clothing, which proves it's him, is extremely sinister. And I don't like that, Dave. These things are
Yeah.
happening out there. I would say, please do not go into the national parks. You lose your safety. Really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. And they haven't determined that animals are doing it, like bears or anything like that, wild cats. So
No.
and they very seldom find the body. they do
They've,
sometimes. They'll find a
yeah,
body.
there's been a few, but it's
Yeah.
it's odd. They've in the freezing snow and ice, they've taken their shoes and socks off. Why? Surely nobody was going to take the shoes and socks off when there's a foot or two of snow around. It
Right.
doesn't make sense. They're in eye shot sometimes of knowing the location, and yet it's as if they were confused. They didn't know where they were, and yet they know the locations like the back of their hands. Some of these people that have turned up and are consciously aware, they say, "Look, tell us what happened. Where have you been? I can't remember." And they won't even allow you to press them. It's strange. I mean, I'm curious, is there anything different about these people? Because they won't talk. They won't talk about their experiences. They don't remember. And then when you press them, I don't want to talk to you. And they get aggressive, get out. I don't want to talk about it. And you're thinking, talk about what? You don't want to
Mm.
talk about it. What's it? What are you not telling me? There's something going on, Dave,
There's
for
yeah, and
sure.
there's young children who disappear for about 4 or 5 days, and no
Oh,
way
that's
no
crazy.
way they can
It's
survive
like, what's it,
on their own,
10,000
Stephen.
feet,
Yeah,
10,000 feet up this blooming
yeah,
mountainside? How did he get there? Because little 2-year-olds.
yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Hmm.
People have said the strange mist, and what's also interesting is that when incidents like this happen, when people suddenly just get plucked out of reality, people are going to national parks and hike and stuff. They know the weather, Dave. They can tell you what the weather's going to be for the next 5 days while they're out
Yeah.
there.
Hmm.
They know. They're always monitoring the weather, right? But if someone's to get strangely disappear under a 411 case, all of a sudden there's a blizzard the next day.
Yeah.
you know, it's profound weather phenomenon that takes place there after these incidents
Yeah,
take place.
I don't know if there's a Matrix thing going on. They talk about the Matrix and the holographic world, and
Yeah.
it is are we getting caught up in the Matrix? And has there been a reset, uh, Stephen? Has there been a recent reset? And it seems like some people are going crazy, and it's good over evil nowadays. Is
Well,
there has there been a reset, Stephen?
well, let me answer. You asked first question about the simulation. Yes, we are, and it's not a theory; it's known fact. Now,
Hmm.
we know we are living in some form of simulation. Consciousness in our heads creates reality. Reality is pliable by phenomena. Phenomena can even manipulate reality. They've frozen people, can't move, whilst you're going about the business over there. They've people driving down the road, seeing an object over the road ahead. So scared they turn round, only to realize when they turn round, they're heading in the same direction again.
Yeah,
Turn around again, and they can't get away, Dave.
it
Phenomena.
sounds like my
Yeah.
experiences last
Like, a
year.
bit like
Yeah,
your experience. They manipulate the reality to get what they want. They're the masters, so they're manipulating that. But when you talk about this reset, well, do you know what? There's certainly a rise of terrible things in this world, and you could say it's the dark, it's it's not the nice stuff that's happening, and people are attracted to it. They can do certain things, and and it's not good. It's not good times, Dave. If there is a battle going on, then we really got to step up our game. People got to step up their game
yes,
because more people now are attracted to the belief of extraterrestrials than God,
yeah.
and that's a big, big problem. You know.
I wanted to talk to you about I want to get this in. You're working on project Enigma. I don't know if you can talk much about it. Is
Yeah,
it
sure.
non-human intelligence? And I wanted to follow up. I want to put this in the package too. There's a lot of talk on the internet, and there's a very interesting guy on the internet who shows movie stars, and they shows people from back in the 1800s looking exactly like that
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Is there? And they say there's no cloning, but there is. They, I guess, through the Matrix, or the people, or power of the be, they're they're interchanging.
I've seen,
They're
yeah.
coming back.
I've
Stephen,
seen some of these. I've seen
yeah,
some of these photos. I saw one of Johnny Depp, I saw a few others, and I thought,
yeah,
that's interesting. That actually looks like him.
yeah.
And I thought, that's strange. You know what I think what's happens, Dave, is that purely by chance, and which people spend a lot when people spend a lot of time on the internet, they come across a picture and they go, "Oh, doesn't that look like that actor, this
Mm.
person?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and they keep it that photo, Other people do the same thing, and eventually somebody comes along and compiles all these things, puts them together. This isn't one person discovering this. It's hundreds of people discovering, similarities in regard or similarca, in regarding images which match seemingly are very close to modern day. But you know what? The face analysts will say to you if you sit down, they'd turn around to you and say, "But Dave, there's only a certain amount of faces that can be generated. You know, a
Hmm.
certain size of eyes, eyebrows, shape,
Yeah.
style, color, whatever. There's only so many. Eventually, you're going to have somebody that looks just so much like you,
Yeah.
you know? And probably not just one, maybe others as well. So who knows? Years ago, we used to say there's a
It could
twin out
be,
there for
yeah,
everyone,
yeah, it could be
you know.
DNA bloodlines from years back. Yeah,
It
right,
could, we just
Stephen?
don't know.
Yeah,
It could,
yeah.
we don't know, but it is some unusual oddities. I've seen some of them. But in regards to your Project Enigma,
Yes, that's what I
Pro-
want to know, Stephen. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so Project Enigma is a project to look into the study and experiments conducted by us, humankind, in regarding NHI communication, non-human intelligence. Now, this goes back thousands of years, Dave, but talking about thousands of years ago when they thought they were deities and they thought they were gods and communicating with them, they had numerous different ways of doing this. But I wanted to look a little bit more in modern times, because I was curious, is it going on? Because I know I've been involved in a number of experiments and utilizing the research I gathered, I put it to the test and it does work. It really does work. Now, let me just tell you the scenario. There are a number of people that might refer to it as a seance. You know what a seance is. You get
Yes.
a certain amount of people and you sit them around a table. You use a physical medium in a trance-like state and trying to communicate with outside forces of intelligence. Now, we most people will think, well, that's just about paranormal stuff. That's just a spirit world and this, that, and the other. Okay. So these experiments, right, was about gaining the right people around that table. And it took 2 years to get the right people to do this experiment because we measured the feedback from how good was the return, how good, what did we experience, well, let's swap this person up. And eventually you end up with the right amount. It's not us picking it. It's phenomena. It's picking the people, you know likes people which are believers, likes people which are experiencers, doesn't like the other guys though, which don't believe in this stuff or don't have any experience. So they're very, very particular. Eventually we build the circle and then we do the sale and then we end up with communications with, and I will go like this, spirits, because we don't really know exactly what they are, but intelligences. But then we push forward more. When you keep pushing forward more, you start to have little things happen around you, poltergeist type things. You've got to completely ignore them. I mean, completely ignore them, push through it. The experiments with push through to require communications with things of not of our realm or reality. And then if you fish on that for around some months, eventually you get a bite and that bite comes through as direct voice phenomena. It's a voice that comes out from the air. It's always above you, strangely enough. If you stand up, it's above you. If you sit down, it's above you. I don't know why. That voice is neither male nor female. It's electronically, you can't really say, is it female? Well, I don't really know. It could be either. It's like in the middle and it's a bit electronic. It's like when it's on a peg on your nose. It's a bit, you know, it's a bit strange, but they're communicating and they refer to themselves of all different things, but they are non-human intelligence. These are, you could say to them, ETs or beings from another reality or whatever you want to refer to these, because they never really tell you exactly what they are, but you can communicate with them, and it opens a communication channel. Now, that took a long time to get there, but once you open a channel with communications with non-human intelligence, you can go away, and when you come back within 5 minutes, they're there again. It's like a phone off the hook. You don't have to go through all that process again. They keep the channel open. They are in control.
Are there
You've
really facts that the government has in the communicating with the
the
supernatural or
governments,
ETs,
have been
Stephen?
doing exactly the same thing, Dave.
Really?
They've been doing the same thing for a long time. There was a doctor, a guy called Puterich, and he ran something called the Lab 9. And the Lab 9 was using people, specialists, to communicate with non-human intelligence. One of those people that attended the Lab 9 sessions was none other than Gene Roddenberry.
Okay.
Yeah. Now,
Mhm.
the entities they're referring to said that they were part of a galactic federation type of thing, a galactic council. Now, where do you think Gene Roddenberry got the idea of the Galactic Federation of Planets from in Star Trek?
Yeah, I know these people like Spielberg and him. They're rubbing elbows with people who know some stuff,
They
Stephen. And
know some
yeah,
stuff.
they know some stuff. Yes.
Yeah, they know some stuff, Dave. And the thing is, this, when I started getting into it, I thought it was just, oh, well, that's just an odd one. No, no, there's hundreds of these things been going on by the establishments. I mean, of course, we know like rocket scientists got into it. Jack Parsons did. Jack Parsons with his scribe was Ron Hubbard. Now, Ron Hubbard, strangely enough, went on to create the Church of Scientology. Now, the Church of Scientology, if you want to get into that and look into what is the Church of Scientology, well, I'll tell you what it is. The Church of Scientology is basically a cult in a sense of speaking,
Yeah.
be honest with you. But it's about the belief in extraterrestrial life or non-human intelligence. And what they teach you, Dave, when you join is you can become pure. So you think to yourself, well, what does that mean? And what do you get from being pure? Okay, so in Scientology, and these are the secrets now coming out, Dave. In Scientology, right, there's what you might refer to as OT levels. And you have to donate a lot of money to get there. If you're rich, it's not a problem. And it's about, well, let's look at the story first. The story is that there's a great godlike being of non-human intelligence. It's like the alien gods, yeah, which they refer to as Zeno. And Zeno cast millions, millions and millions of non-human entities, cast them down to planet Earth, into planet Earth, into the ground, into planet Earth. Through mankind's work, we have created places for them to be able to get out. And when they did get out, they decided to embody themselves with humans in humanity. So every human has got this embodiment of an NHI within them. Now, they said NHI, this is what Scientology says, NHI can do things because they have pure will. That means that allows them to manipulate their own reality. They can walk right through that wall there. They can come
Mhm.
through your ceiling. They can change the aspects of the reality so that it's rewarding for them. Or you never have any problems. You'll never have worries about money or health. You'll always have success in your business. This is what NHI do. They can have this because they can manipulate the reality. Now, how to get for humans to have that, they've got to rid themselves of the NHI within them. And to do that, it's about purifying. It's about management of energy, management of light, space, time, all these things. And they teach you the process how to do that, to rid yourself of the NHI and become pure. And when you do become pure, you can manipulate your own reality to being very successful and wealthy. So you can see how it can attract the wealthy, can't you? Like Tom Cruise and
Yeah, Tom Cruise. I was
people
gonna
like
say, yeah.
that. You know what I mean?
Stephen, I got a question on that too. Now, could you said we could be carrying NHI in each of us, or maybe the ETs interested maybe in the NHI that are inhabiting certain people? Is that why what attracts
Well,
them,
it's
Stephen?
it's their belief. It's their belief that NHI. I mean, it's an old ancient story, but they believe NHI lie in all humans. Humans are born with the embodiment of NHI within them.
Mhm.
It's the same NHI that do all the other stuff. It's exactly the same stuff. However, what do they want? Well, I mean, if you it starts getting a bit dark, Dave. You start getting into the Scientology, it starts questioning about where our soul goes and what's in control of the soul and stuff, and the importance of it. It is a cult. But the thing is that this isn't just one cult. There's many of them. which were dealing with this sort of stuff. And of course, Jack Parsons, which works with L. Ron Hubbard, who created Scientology, was also closely associated to Aleister Crowley. And Jack Parsons was basically one of Aleister Crowley's pupils. And Aleister Crowley was communicating with NHI, with L. Ron Hubbard during ritual practices at his Pasadena mansion. And eventually they communicated, just like we have, because they communicated with NHI. But they wanted to go one further. They wanted to be gifted with knowledge from them. Well, apparently they were told through these communications with these non-human intelligence are coordinations. They gave them the coordinates of a location where to go to conduct the ritual, and you will be rewarded. And not only was the coordinations in the middle of the Mojave Desert, where these so remote, yeah, but they also demanded that Jack Parsons take a sample of his own blood and give it as an offering. So he had to use a syringe to take his own blood and take it there in a little vial and give it as an offering, a bloodletting offering. Now that is ancient, isn't it? That is
Yes.
ancient stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
Bad stuff too.
Bad stuff. But he got what he wanted. He was suddenly downloaded and given all this information about rocket science training. And the next day he's back there making these things and it's working. They helped us get to the stars, and not in a good way, but in a bad way. They wanted us to achieve, great technologies. They want us to get out up there and do all these things. But when I thought, well, that's interesting. Let's start looking through the rocket genius then. Who was responsible for getting mankind into space around the world? Well, you've got this guy called Oberth, and then he was like German, and then you've got this Russian guy, and you got this. I'm looking through, and I find the details about these rocket geniuses that created space race for us and
Mhm.
rocket engineering. And some of them had wrote biographies, they've passed away, a lot of them now. So you start reading their biographies, where they got the information from. It was downloaded to them. They were part of ritualistic practices. They were parts of experiments in communications with things which provided the information for them. And then I dug deep into Bell, Boeing, Douglas, all the aircraft companies.
Yes.
They were involved in these practices as well to gain information. All these companies not always against each other. They were sat around the table together, the heads of these companies, communications being obtained from non-human intelligence about aeronautical designs and manufacturing of certain things. Bits of information was passed to them. So
Yeah.
they utilized it.
Now,
Gifted.
Stephen, they talk about these people in Hollywood being clones or being not who they're supposed to be, and they belong to this Allison Crowley type situation. Like Tom Cruise, I guess, led a lot of them into it, and they say
Yeah.
you have to buy into it before you become famous. Is that true
Yeah.
too, Stephen?
It's absolutely true. And I know some of them. And do you know what's ironic, Dave, is that some of these real famous people have actually opened up on television and said, oh yeah, I do these
Hmm.
rituals, and oh yeah, and I channel this entity into me to help me perform.
Right.
And you think, what the hell? There was a very interesting bit of with Shirley MacLaine years ago at one of the awards ceremonies, and they'd just done a film called Tears of Endearment, Shirley MacLaine and Jack Nicholson, and they had this. Shirley MacLaine comes up stage and she's talking, and she says, "Yes, working with Jack Nicholson's been a pleasure." And she's talking to Jack Nicholson and saying, "Do you remember that night, when we did when we had to do this film sequence? It was in the bed, and we had to sort of say these certain lines." And so, Jack Nicholson's nodding, yeah. And she says, "Do you remember, Jack, when you said these words and two voices came out of you, two completely different voices?" He says, "Yeah." She says, "Do you
Mhm.
remember what you said to me? You said to me, Jack, 'Well, baby, you know, well, Shirl, I'm a man of many voices,' or something like that,
Yeah.
you know." She turned round to him, pointed at him. She said, "No, Jack, you were channeling." Because it's a no methodology in Hollywood to be conducting certain ritualistic practices to gain success, wealth, and health. But what you've got to do in favor of that, Dave, is that you've got to put an altar up to them in your home. You've got to pray to them. You've got to pay homage to them. You've got to worship them.
Yeah.
And you've got to denounce God.
Wow.
There's the big one.
I knew Shirley MacLaine was into it deep, and also I had one of her close friends on my show about a year and a half
Oh,
ago.
right.
Yeah, and I talked to her and I learned some stuff, but I forgot a lot of the stuff. I had to go back through that, and she was telling me about some of this stuff. That Shirley MacLaine was very talented. She could drive without her eyes, and
She
things of that nature.
exceptionally
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
Yeah.
Stephen. Yeah, did you? I guess you've heard stories from her like
Oh,
that, right, Stephen?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen her in interviews many times. She used to actually come on radio shows and talk and stuff and share information. She was very well into it, but she wasn't in it. She stayed clear of all that darkness. She
Hmm.
might say, and that's not easy in the days of Hollywood days, Dave.
Yeah. No.
Not in the 70s and 80s, Dave. It was a nightmare. It's everywhere, it's drugs and alcohol and introducing children to it. I mean, look, we're hearing horror stories now from people which are famous and adults now talking about the horrors of what they experienced from Hollywood when they were younger. The thing is that there's this strange stuff going on. And it's not just in Hollywood, Dave. It's seeped out into the corners of the world. And it's being done behind closed doors and
Yeah.
curtains now, drawn curtains, and we don't get to hear about it. It is the most suppressed secret in the world that this stuff is going on. So people get rewarded, they get gifted,
Mhm.
through the phenomena. Now, sometimes the phenomena will even absolutely gift you certain things on purpose. I'll give you a scenario, at least two or three incidents on military bases, remote military bases, suddenly goes into red alert, lockdown because there's an object approaching and it ain't one of ours. It hangs in the sky over the base for a couple of minutes. It slowly descends outside the base and landing gear comes out and it lands and it sits there with the door open. So eventually the authorities get there thinking, what the hell's going on? And they go in there, there's nobody in it. It's just like the phenomenon said, there you go.
Mhm.
Have one of them for yourself.
Yeah.
Back engineer it, learn about it, do what you want with it. It's a gift. There were no beings on board,
Yeah.
you know?
NHI, Stephen, that's very interesting. To close out and to get you to bed, because it's in UK, it's a little later over there. Uh, I wanted to ask you, they're talking about President Trump. He has his daughter-in-law said that already has I guess a speech written out, and he's about ready to release the information on disclosure. Stephen,
Mm.
what do you know about that? Having contacts with
Well,
a lot of people.
this is, I don't think anything happens like this for accidents, Dave. There's a pattern of events that I see unfolding for quite some time. I've heard on the grapevine that he's not supposed to be announcing until around about the 20 something of June. From what I've been told, might be earlier, I don't know. But there's certainly something on its way. And he has requested, it's not as an executive order, because people have been saying, oh, yeah, he's putting out an executive order to release this, that, and the other on you. No, he hasn't. He's asked them to be providing information to the White House, to the Pentagon, from the Pentagon, to be delivered to the White House in pertaining to the UFOs, not biological entities, all those sort of things to be released to him, to them at the White House, and they will be in response to should they being delivered to the human society. It coincides, interesting enough, what you just was saying, Dave. It coincides with Steven Spielberg's movie Disclosure
Yeah.
Day,
Yes, it does.
D-Day,
Hmm.
summer release, which is June, the same month. What the hell's going on there, Dave? I
Yeah,
mean, that's a
yeah,
bit too coincidental as far as
that
I'm
is.
concerned.
That is.
Plus, also, Spielberg was filming most of his film in New Jersey at the same time of the UAP drones were over New Jersey. I think he might have even got one in the film. Yes, wouldn't that be unique?
Yeah.
You know?
Stephen, I heard
So,
this movie is more it's got consciousness in it and enlightenment in it, and it has, human emotion, but it doesn't have a monster attack or the creatures from Mars or anything like that to it, Stephen. It's a more
no,
of
I
a
mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot. There's UFOs in it for sure. But the thing is that whatever these beings are, they utilize, they infiltrate. You know, they don't need to physically put themselves in harm. You know, humans aren't very desirable creatures to stand in front of and upset, are they? They infiltrate the human mind. They infiltrate animals. It's about consciousness and communications through
Yeah.
them. It's just like their consciousness has been hijacked. This is where he's going with it. And it's very interesting he's going with this, Dave, because he's hitting the nail on the head in regarding some of the documents I've been reading and what I've been allowed to find out pertaining to NHI and how they operate. And consciousness hijacking is definitely one of them. So I think he's like you said, I think he's been given a little helping hands there, Dave, in regarding the movie, just like he did back
Right.
in the late 70s with Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But it was a very different phenomena feeling back then. You know, it was all love and light, and these crafts are coming from other planets and this that. No, now it's all changed. He's fitted the film to match the times now, which is very interesting.
Okay. It's been very interesting. It's always interesting talking to you, Stephen. And
Thanks. Thank
I'm
you.
gonna have to let you go and get to bed, get some rest, so you can get up tomorrow and do all your work again, over and over. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know.
You do so much work you can't even talk about most of it because you're under restrictions and NDA
Yeah,
and things
some
of that
things
nature.
are.
Yeah. So but I'm interested in how how this is all going to be released and
Mm.
it, they might even loosen up some of your information that you might be able to talk about before long
I do
also.
believe so. I mean, I'd never join a think tank if I thought that they'd never release this information.
Yeah.
I'm only in think tanks because I think about, okay, I know some things which will get released at some point,
Hmm.
and I look forward to that. And it gives me the opportunity to find out beforehand, which is a little help.
Yeah. Now uh you have several websites we talk about: the Phenomena Magazine, UK shows, Fox Outcast,
Mm.
Witness from Another World.com, and books on Amazon. I'll have those in a narrative. And Stephen Mera, so nice to have you. And I know we'll be
No,
talking
thank you.
again. I know
Yes,
there might
sure.
be some new things that I might have to ask you about and say, hey, Stephen, what the hell was this I just witnessed? So you help me, get a I guess put those pieces of the puzzle together on some of these things. But I'm sure there's a lot of people out there interested in
Mm.
what you're saying, Stephen. And I want to thank you for being on the show on Dave Emmons, The
Yeah,
Strange Reality.
thank you.
And Stephen Mera, thank you. And good night to everybody. Good afternoon or whatever. And thank you for following us. And just check out my new digs and let me know if it's ugly or not. Okay, bye bye.